Happy Thanksgiving, Minters! Wherever you are, I hope you are safe. I hope you are happy. I hope you feel gratitude for all the good things in your life. And if there is nothing, I hope things get much better for you. And since you're watching this video, things can't be too bad, right? Today, I want to talk about Arcane. If you don't know, Arcane Season 2 finished its final season last week. And for me, it was disappointing. Let's start with the things that I liked about Arcane. Season 1 was pretty good. I would say as far as TV shows go, it's a solid 7. I would say Act 1, I believe, is actually peak. Arcane Season 1, Act 1 is a 10 in my opinion. And this arc is, well, we're going to talk about some spoilers here, so just a fair warning. Right now you're getting a spoiler alert. Leave if you don't want to get spoiled, but Arcane Season 1, Act 1 is where they go through Jinx and Vi's childhood. So it's after their parents have died. They're with Vander. And basically it ends with Vi going to jail and Jinx getting quote unquote kidnapped by Silco. And that arc from episode 1, Season 1, up until, I can't remember what episode it was, but until the end of when Jinx gets taken by, or Powder gets taken by Silco, is a 10. Absolutely 10. Peak storytelling, absolutely peak art. Like Arcane's art style cannot be beat. And then after that, I feel like Arcane kind of goes downhill. Like everything after that kind of feels rushed in my opinion. Because Act 1 has a ton of plot twists, dramatic irony, and it's a very well thought out and well told story from beginning to end. But everything after that kind of feels like a rush job in which they kind of knew where the story was going, but they had a limited amount of time to either write the story or to animate the story or something. It felt very rushed. That's what it felt like. So Arcane, from every episode, art style, phenomenal. Like I don't think there's another series ever that has a better art style than Arcane. And I really like a lot of the elements that they put in it. Like there's some abrupt changes in like the artwork and the rhythm of the story, I think. The most notable or that I can remember is from Season 1 when Echo and Jinx are fighting on the bridge. It kind of turns into a music video. And I really like that. Like I didn't like it at first, but after rewatching Season 1, that kind of cadence and kind of storytelling that they use grew on me. So now let's get into Season 2 because Season 2 is what everybody's talking about. I'll say I didn't like the start of it, the very, very start, because Season 1 ends with a cliffhanger of Jinx's rocket entering the courtroom of Piltover, and then Season 2 picks up after the rocket has exploded and the damage is done. I personally wish that the story would have picked up like a millisecond after Season 1 had ended, because I want to see the explosion. I didn't really understand how Jace and Mel were unharmed during the blast, which they kind of like throw in a line later that explains it, but it didn't really feel satisfying to me. But other than that, I like where the story was going. Like my favorite plot was probably Victor's rise from like scientist to like mech Jesus or hex tech Jesus, I guess. Like that was pretty cool. But the thing that left a bad taste in my mouth were like the last 2 or 3 episodes, because it kind of went against a lot of the characters and what they were building up to. Like we have the Noxians who are like, okay, we're all pro-war, and you have Ambessa, who's a very cunning and strong leader, who finds Victor and then decides that the Noxians and Victor's hex tech slaves should join forces. Because in this interaction, she's not like the strongest person there. Victor is obviously the strongest person in that relationship. So it's kind of like if she has this lust for power and to be on top, she wouldn't have joined with Victor, who could like enslave her and her entire army with like one snap of his fingers. So it was really weird seeing her character go from like this power hungry person into teaming up with this stronger person. So that's my problem with Ambessa's character. But now let's get into a problem that I have with, I guess, maybe the protagonist of Arcane, which is Jinx. So Jinx, throughout the entire series, has an identity crisis. Is she Jinx or is she Powder? And she fights with herself as well as fighting where her sister belongs in her life. And we finally get to a conclusion of where her emotions stands and where her identity sits in the second to last episode of Arcane. And it makes sense, and it really fits her character from what we know from the game, from people who have played League of Legends, from what they built up in Arcane Season 1, and all throughout Season 2 as well. She decides to abandon her sister. But then, in the last episode, it's like none of that ever happened. And Jinx goes back to saying like, always with you, sis, and talking to Vi as if like the last episode had never happened. It was very abrupt and against the character that they had built through both seasons up until the final episode of season 2. Because season 2 was, okay, like Jinx might have some powder left in her. She might be fully Jinx. She might be a mix. She might be fully powder. And then it goes, okay, now we're Jinx 100%. And then in the final episode, it's like, okay, now we're kind of powder 95%. It just made no sense to me. And then the scaling of like Hex Tech did not really make sense either. Like there are a bunch of forgotten plot points that were left unresolved in Arcane Season 2. A big part of the early parts of Season 2 was that Echo's tree was being affected by the Hex Gates, and there was like corruption happening. And I feel like the corruption aspect wasn't addressed super well. Like visually it was there and a big part of it, but I don't think they explained it conceptually very well, nor the resolution of it. And if you're confused, like I feel that Arcane Season 2 was just confusing. It was very roundabout. There was a lot of stuff going on that didn't fully come together. Like Singed, who was a big part of Season 2, wasn't even in the final episode at all. And I just think that maybe if this had been a 12-episode series, then maybe they could have put more time into better storytelling and concluded all the plot points rather than just like ending it with the power of friendship with Jace and Victor at the end. So yeah, Arcane Season 2 was a bit of a letdown because I absolutely loved Season 1, but I had a feeling that it was kind of going in that direction anyway. Like at the end of the day, it is a Netflix series, and in my experience, Netflix shows have been quite disappointing, to be honest. So I'm not super surprised, but I am just really disappointed in how it ended, especially for a game that so many people love, like League of Legends, and that's so lore heavy. I would have thought that they would have put more time into the storytelling so that lore lovers would kind of have a good conclusion to fall back on. So if you haven't watched Arcane, I still highly recommend it. It has a huge budget of like $250 million, I think, which makes it the most expensive animated series ever. And it has great art, some very unique art styles and storytelling. So if you're into that kind of stuff and you're not necessarily into just like the story itself, I would highly recommend watching it. Because at the end of the day, it is still a pretty good show. Just it probably doesn't have the ending that you'd expect for how good it was up until the final episode. So that's all. I just wanted to talk about how disappointed I was about Arcane. I'll see you next time. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.